trying to scroll through everybody here, but do we have our plan? Yeah, I see Abby and Lupe and Howard. Okay, perfect. Okay, July 12th, it's just after 4:02 p.m. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Can I go through roll call of Planning Commission members present? I have Howard Tritz.
Here.
Abby Dallmann. I think I saw her on here. Abby Dallmann, are you on? Abby, I can see you. Can you hear us? Abby, can you hear us?
Can you hear us? Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
I don't know what's going on. Now I can. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Abby Dallmann here.
Yep, I'm here.
Bryce Ehrlich and Aaron Palin, I know, said they would not be able to make it this evening. And then we have Lupe Bobadilla.
Yes, I'm here.
Perfect, thank you. And Lake County Commissioners, do we have Commissioner Mudge?
I'm here. Thanks, Heather.
Commissioner Marcella?
I'm here, thank you.
Commissioner Fiedler?
Here.
Perfect, thank you. Just a quick note, there are several people on here this evening that have either initials or usernames, and if you could please put your name either on your Zoom chat for the public record, or if you can put it in the chat, that would be helpful as well. And I think I'm one of those. For some reason, my name keeps disappearing on here. Okay. Any changes or additions to the agenda? Okay, we have minutes to approve from July 2nd. Were the Planning Commission members that are here tonight, were you present for the July 2nd meeting that you can make a motion to approve? I think a couple.
I'll make the motion to approve those minutes.
Okay. Can I get a second, please?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Heather, could I raise a small point of order?
Sure.
Lupe, I don't think you were there at that meeting.
No.
So I don't think you can second it. And I think that Aaron Palin and Bryce Ehrlich was the applicant. I don't think there's anybody that can second it.
Right.
Except you. And I think that you and Howard are the only ones that can actually vote on it.
Okay, yeah, until we have a meeting with Aaron.
Right.
Okay, we can just table those to the next meeting. Ian, would you mind scrolling down for me? Okay, next item on the agenda is new business. We have file number 20-19 of the Angelview preliminary plat. And preliminary plat is this, do I need to read the public hearing verbiage that we usually do on this one, Anne? This is public hearing, right?
Yes, do you have that?
I will have it in just a moment. Oh, you know what? The one I have is for conditional use permit.
I apologize, Heather. I can't get onto VPN, which is our network connection, so I can't get to the county documents. Certainly can talk about the basis of tonight's hearing if you would like.
Sure. Let me just read this opening statement without referencing a section of the code, but just so that everybody kind of understands the procedure for this evening.
Nice.
And I'll just do it without the section. Lake County Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners will now conduct a joint public hearing. This statement I am reading will be incorporated into and made part of the record on these proceedings. The Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners have jurisdiction to conduct a joint public hearing on this preliminary plat application under the Lake County Land Development Code. The purpose of this hearing is to consider whether the preliminary plat application shall be approved. In considering that manner, the Commission will address the approval criteria set forth in the Land Development Code. The procedure to be followed during this hearing is number one, the Planning Commissioners and the County Commissioners will disclose if they have any ex parte communications. County staff will then make an initial presentation. Then the applicant may make their presentation. Following the applicant's presentation, any other person supporting the application may present any evidence supporting the application. Then any persons opposing the application may present evidence. The applicant may then present any rebuttal evidence. The Commission and the Board ask that the parties and witnesses not submit redundant, irrelevant, or cumulative evidence. If someone has already made the point that you wish to make, simply say so. The Chair will also require that all comments be made to the Planning Commission and the Board, and that there be no dialogue between applicant and members of the audience. At the conclusion of the evidentiary portion of the hearing, the Chair will entertain a motion to close that portion of the hearing, or alternatively, the hearing can be continued so that the applicant or staff can provide additional information. Assuming the hearing is not continued, the Commission will discuss and weigh the evidence. Then there will be a motion to close the discussion phase of the joint public hearing. The Board of County Commissioners will then leave the meeting and the Chair of Planning Commission will entertain a motion on the application. The motion may take form of the following: approval of the application with no conditions, approval of the application with the recommended conditions, approval of the application with newly identified conditions, or a denial of the application. The Planning Director shall make a record of any substantial discussion on the motion and include that in the record with the recommendation of the Commission. The Commission's recommendation will be in the form of the statement of motion. Are there any objections to the jurisdiction of the Commission or to the form or substance of these proceedings? Okay. Hearing none, I will move it along so that Anne can make her initial presentation.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
could I ask that you appoint Lupe as a voting member tonight?
I will. Lupe Bobadilla is appointed as a voting member this evening.
Thank you, Chairman Lindh. This is presentation of file number 2019 Angelview subdivision preliminary plan review. The proposal is in response to Land Development Code section 3.16 subdivision major, section 3.16.4 preliminary plan. The applicant received conditional sketch plan pursuant to Lake County Resolution 2020-04. And this is the tabled hearing that was originally set for March 22nd of 2021. This is a proposal for a residential development on 71.1 acres just east of the village of Twin Lakes. It provides consideration of 17 lots, each a minimum of 3 acres, designed as single-family residential parcels served by well and septic. The subdivision is to be gated and private. As part of the review, we have ongoing referrals to all stakeholders and agencies of both local, state, and federal. And to it, we have sent this proposal to the Lake County Emergency Operations, Lake County Sheriff, Lake County Environmental Health Department, Lake County Public Works, Lake County School District, CDOT, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, Colorado State Forest Service, the U.S. Forest Service, Chaffee County Commissioners, Leadville Lake County Fire Rescue, Sangre de Cristo Association, Army Corps of Engineers, Bureau of Reclamation, the Colorado Geologic Survey, the Division of Water Resources, State Engineer, the Leadville Lake County Housing Coalition, CDPHE, SEH, who is the county engineer, and the Lake County Open Space Initiative. They were all consulted as part of this development review. As part of that review, there was a wildlife protection analysis done where we worked with Colorado Parks and Wildlife. They had several recommendations that the applicant has incorporated into the homeowners association documents within the CCNRs. They're specific to proper trash receptacles being animal proof, any kind of attractants such as bird feeders and things, how to properly utilize them to not attract bears, pet cages and pens, hobby farming is being discouraged. They were all contained within the staff report, and all of those items that CPW recommended have been incorporated into the CNCNRs as required and encouraged by staff to the applicant. Next, as we follow the code, we get into geologic hazards analysis. The applicant hired CTL Thompson to do the initial hazard identification and on site. And they performed the geotechnical investigation and geologic hazards evaluation. And after a thorough investigation, they have provided evidence the site is suitable for the planned development. And I quote, "We found no geologic hazards that preclude development. Risks due to these concerns can be mitigated with normal development techniques, proper planning, engineering, design, and construction." And as part of that site control and analysis to make sure that hazards are properly mitigated, we recommended the next 4 mitigating factors. 1, construction testing and observation during grading. Site development, building, and pavement construction. Number 2, subgrade investigation and pavement design. Number 3, design level soils and foundation investigations at the time of building permit. And number 4, foundation installation observation. Then all of their analysis was then forwarded on to the Colorado Geologic Survey, who identified some other concerns. They largely concurred with all of the findings that CTL Thompson had within theirs. They additionally made recommendations for a local and global stability analysis as part of the overall retaining wall design for walls extending 4 feet in height. This is evident in Plat Note 14 requiring engineering of any retaining walls. Number 2, they also said groundwater monitoring observation be performed during design levels as part of the design level soils and foundation investigations. And this is included and addressed at Plat number 20 on the submitted preliminary plan. Staff's response would just be making sure to identify and require hazard mitigation is critical due to the inherent concerns in the area. Standard practice to memorialize site-specific controls is to include them in the subdivision plat notes. The applicant's engineer has added notes to reflect the required site controls. Construction oversight, monitoring, and ongoing investigation will be required. A condition is suggested to manage proper reporting and monitoring of construction progress. At the time of building permitting, staff would suggest foundation plans should be required to be engineered as part of the building permit construction documents. Currently, Lake County does not routinely require an engineered foundation plan for new residential construction. So it's beneficial to carry the site controls through to the new home construction. Next, moving through the code, we move into wildfire protection and hazard plan. And we have vetted this with Lake County's emergency operations, led the Lake County Fire Rescue, and the applicant hired the Colorado State Forest Service to address wildfire mitigation. And Adam Moore actually prepared a wildfire protection and hazard plan that is been submitted as part of the preliminary plan. Additionally, at the direction of staff, and these have been memorialized both on the plat and in the homeowners documents, and a copy has been provided to building and land use for easy reference for anyone that would be inquiring about this plan. There was a desire to make sure that anyone investing and becoming a member of this community had ready access to the plan, and making sure that everyone was aware of the plan. And part of the compliance for fire safety and protection that is required within in the code, the plan consists of the plan itself, installation of between maybe 1 or 2 different cisterns, a capacity of 10,000 gallons of water for emergency response. Leadville Lake County has approved roadway construction access, which is essential, requiring all homes to be equipped with approved fire sprinkler systems. This will be a requirement of any new home construction, and knockbox access for emergency response. So all gated access will have the ability to have easy responder access through knockbox. As I mentioned, the WPHP, the Wildfire Protection Hazard Plan, is referenced within the CCNRs and memorialized on the plat at plat number 9. The home suppression requirement is noted at plat 18, and the Knox box requirement is also a subdivision improvement agreement improvement that is addressed within the SIA. Next, code moves on to environmental impact. And as part of that review, we look to the help of the Colorado State Forest Service, the U.S. Forest Service, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Colorado Department of Health and Environment, and also the applicant hired Birch Ecology to do a wetland delineation report to address the very critical wetlands habitat that are present, and the aquatic habitat that are present within the proposed subdivision. Also, drainage, erosion, flood, and sedimentation control were reviewed and proposed to have a drainage study and erosion control plan by Marcella Engineering, who was hired by the applicant for the benefit of that study. These 2 plans need to be further reviewed by the county engineer, and any suggested revisions shall be considered and adequately addressed prior to the final plat. Drainage easements are noted on the plat and referenced at plat number 19. Street network and design. This was vetted with Lake County Public Works and the county engineer. And Marcella Engineering worked on behalf of the applicant. All amended construction documents, the applicant has done a good deal of modification to the construction documents and roadways based upon our first review from the engineer. And so there are several amended engineering pages or construction documents that need to go before the county engineer again for final review prior to final plat. There was one variance request that the applicant requested from Chapter 10 of the roadway guidelines and design. And that was the nature trail that is present within the development. Code calls for a hard covering on that trail. However, the applicant asked if they to use crusher fines. They felt that it was a more harmonious material with the natural environment within the subdivision. That variance was granted by Lake County Public Works and supported by staff. SM Roca LLC conducted the traffic study in concert with the Colorado Department of Transportation. Through that study and review by CDOT, the applicant is required to install a left turn deceleration lane at the main access into the subdivision. And early discussions with the developer and Leadville Lake County Fire Rescue determined the need for a second emergency egress apparatus road. This has been provided through an easement negotiated between the northeast of the subdivision boundary with the adjacent property owner, Charles Fleener, and is attached within the submittal under Appendix Q, which will be required to be recorded along with an approved final plat. The utility plan is the basis of how they will address water, sanitation, power, and communications on site. Currently, the subdivision has a file pending, a water court application at case number 20CW3020 to supply water to the 17 residential lots, each consisting of a single family home and up to 990 square feet of lawn and garden irrigation. The water plan will also service the community center and potentially an addition, maybe at a later phase, of a chapel. The applicant is addressing the non-potable water to fill the pond and replace evaporative losses by either a diversion from the Bartlett Gulch per water decree plan for augmentation and or a state engineer approved substitute water plan. The applicant has furnished a copy of the pending court documents along with an in-depth water analysis that address code outlined requirements, as well as a lease agreement with Pueblo Water to address the non-potable needs. Staff did consult with the Division of Water Resources and learned that they are still at that time, they were still within the objection period. The most critical outcome is a court-approved water decree to serve the development. Without it, they will not be able to move forward into final plat. Staff will defer to the applicant to share where they are in the process and any estimated timelines on their final water. Of course, those will be a condition suggested for preliminary and obtained prior to final plat. Lake County and Environmental Health, it is required that lots being serviced by well and septic are a minimum of 2.5 acres, which of course these lots all meet that minimum, as well as the development of new lots based on outstanding and ongoing issues within the county of not having enough room on lots, historic lots, when we have failed systems to have enough room for an additional or a substitute leach field. We have amended code to now address this at the time of new subdivision. And so when an applicant comes in, they are required to demonstrate that there is a potential to have two STA or soil treatment areas present on a lot. This analysis was done by Marson Engineering as part of the engineering review and submitted. They did a sampling of 5 of the 17 lots with a review that the soils within the area are indicative throughout, and so that this was a fair representation of the adequacy of each of the lots to be able to have a secondary location for an STA. This information was reviewed by the Director of Public Environmental Health, Jackie Littlepage, and she found that it meets the intent of the code, and so they have been able to bring in a design that supports the requirement for the sanitary sewage disposal. Power and Communications, San Cristo is the electricity provider, and they have pledged to have lighting that will be dark sky compliant. However, they were not able to provide any lighting details as this is a new program that they estimate will be available in time. Dark sky compliance will be mandatory, so their new programming will be important to stay focused on for the applicant. Colorado or Central Colorado Telecom is the anticipated telecommunications provider. However, the applicant is still waiting on the logistics and confirmation from them. So there is a suggested condition that this be confirmed prior to final plat. And then LP gas shall be an individual homeowner's preference, as well as they may utilize solar energy or solar power. We do currently have a draft of the subdivision improvement agreement that is with our legal and will be reviewed and will be negotiated prior to final plat. So any revisions that the county has will be provided to the applicant in preparation for their final plat. The one condition that's coming out of preliminary is just that the Knox boxes are included within that subdivision improvement agreement. And then one of the last things I have to talk about is just the reservation and dedication of public sites. It shall be the responsibility of a subdivider to provide land within a proposed subdivision, either through dedication, reservation, or by payment in lieu of dedication or reservation for public use areas. Such dedication, reservation, or payment in lieu shall be made to Lake County prior or concurrently with the recording of the final plat. In response to that, the applicant is proposing Tract E noted on the plat as a emergency services facility, looking to make that public land dedication to the county at that area. Early discussions with the applicant identified that he believed there was an unmet need and desire for a mutual aid in the area. Even though I think that it was important for them to note that they recognize the county's first priority is the Southern Fire Station, and that there are lingering questions remaining over public-private coordination, staffing, among others, for this facility. However, it's at the point in the subdivision process where the need arises to identify if a suitable location can be determined to be made for the public dedication. And the intent is to dedicate a suitable location to create a future opportunity. Staff suggests it'll be important to legally vet the acceptance of the land dedication to avoid any unintended acceptance of unresolved issues regarding, but not limited to, the funding, the public-private agreements that have yet to be determined. There are also additional hurdles within the zoning. The dedication of a 2.1 acre tract does not meet the minimum lot size for the RZ zone district, and it is under the 2.5 acre requirement for lots that are serviced by well and septic. So in response to this, the applicant has submitted concurrently a code amendment for addressing amending the code in order to establish this opportunity. And what that means is that they are looking to amend the code by which they would come in and add use-specific standards to emergency facilities within the use table. And under these standards, what they would be seeking is that sites could be analyzed on a case-by-case basis as far as size, topography, the ability to service the individual lot with well and septic, still while staying within the other guidelines of the zone district that they may fall in. Because this code amendment would not just affect Angelview, but it would be a county-wide code amendment. So if the code amendment is unsuccessful, then this could simply be an open space tract or a tract that could potentially be dedicated to the public. But that is the intention of the applicant, is to move forward seeking the code amendment so that this Tract E could be potentially utilized in the future for emergency services facility. It is good to note that applying fundamental planning practices, the preferred, more appropriate method to address the situation versus a code amendment would have been pursuing a PUD process. This process versus a code amendment that looks to amend code countywide would have been, through the PUD process, would have been able to create these opportunities specific to this location and not by affecting the code throughout. That being said, the other side is that the code is always strengthened when we add use-specific standards to it. We have a wide variety of uses out there with absolutely no standards in the current code of the appropriate method of review for each of those uses. So adding use-specific standards could potentially strengthen the code throughout. However, that's a future discussion and decision. There are other methods as well to address this requirement within Chapter 6, as I mentioned at the beginning of this discussion. There is dedication, there is payment in lieu. There are other means by which to address this requirement within the code. This is just the preferred method by the applicant. There was a slight modification from sketch to preliminary as far as the school land or dedication or fee in lieu. At sketch, we were looking at 15 lots. We have now changed to adjust to 17 lots. So there was a fee applied based on the number of lots. So that fee to the schools has increased slightly and is now $17,153. The applicant is aware of it, the school is aware of it, and they have mutual agreement on the payment in lieu versus a dedication. Staff has gone through and provided you with response to the approval criteria, and those are all included within the staff report. I'm not going to take up too much more of your time because this has been a very long review, and I know the applicant probably has a lot to share. So the very last thing that I would like to do is just go through and read the 15 conditions. And just if I feel like there needs to be just a little explanation, I'll add those, and then I'll just close up and just ask for questions. So the conditions of approval that would be suggested if that were to be the desire of the Planning Commission this evening are: one, that construction plan documents for building permit are required to include a stamped foundation plan designed and reviewed by a Colorado licensed engineer. This shall be included in a plat note. It's important, and the reason that we feel it's important to have that plat note, that's how buyers looking to invest in this area gain a lot of knowledge. So instead of not knowing what to expect, plat notes are really beneficial for anyone doing their due diligence as they're looking to invest within an area, any subdivision. Number two, the applicant will provide knock boxes at all gated entry points to ensure emergency egress. The boxes shall be considered a public improvement within the SIA. Three, the revised drainage study and erosion control plan, the WPHP and amended construction doc pages to include parking shall be reviewed by the county engineer. Any suggested revisions shall be considered and adequately addressed prior to final plat. Applicant will provide a will serve letter confirmation from the chosen telecommunication provider prior to final plat. Number five, payment of the school land dedication fee in lieu in the amount of $17,153 as determined by Lake County School District and approved by the developer shall be due and payable prior to the recording of the final plat. Number six, construction testing and observation during grading and site development, building and pavement construction is required. Applicant shall provide monthly reporting to Lake County Building and Land Use to determine compliance. Number seven, subgrade investigation and pavement design is required. Number eight, foundation installation observation is required. Number nine, an approved water supply plan is required at final plat along with compliance of the preliminary submittal requirements of the water plan. Number 10, section 3.16.4, soils and vegetation report. Applicant shall comply with all soil and vegetation items discussed in the CTL Thompson and Birch ecology reports. Number 11, a lighting plan compliance with dark sky principles shall be submitted prior to final plat. 12, the parking spaces crossing into track B from Angelview Way shall be repaired. They crossed over the lot lines. 13, Appendix Q shall be reported and a reference to it shall be made on the plat in the notes. And that's the private landowner easement agreement for emergency egress. And then number 15, all statements made by the applicant in his application and in hearing shall be considered as conditions of approval unless modified by other conditions of approval. And after that long-winded presentation, I'm happy to answer any questions or defer on to the applicant.
Do any of the planning commissioners or county commissioners have questions on Anne's staff report before we move on to the applicant presentation?
And I'm just curious, where are we at with that code amendment?
So the code amendment, I would estimate that I would be looking to publish it this week. And so I would say we're about 45 days out from hearing that.
Thank you.
Okay, do we know who with the applicant would like to start their presentation?
I can start. This is Alan.
Great, Alan, thank you.
Let's see. I'll have to share my screen. I'll get approval to do that.
Heather, are you able to give him access?
And yeah, there we go. Okay,
that work? Okay.
Okay, should be able to see my screen. So, well, first off, thank you so much for everyone at the on this Zoom call for your time and everybody that's calling in. We appreciate it. And this has been a long and exciting journey. It's been almost 4 years now, and very proud of what we've accomplished in that period of time. So what we're going to cover, first of all, I'm going to introduce you to the team. I've got quite a few people on the Zoom call right now. We're going to talk about a dashboard that we finally came up with to help us keep track of everything. We're going to talk about our water supply plan and the fear of impact of existing wells. We're going to introduce our adventure concierge. It's a concept you haven't heard yet. We're going to hit some highlights, talk about some of the differences from preliminary plan, discuss the emergency services center, and then go through the approval criteria. So first off, some of the folks that you'll see faces, you may not know, Bart Johnson is our land use attorney. I guess I should say, I can't describe myself as a developer because I don't think I'm very good at it. If I'm really not as focused on making money as I am really conserving the property itself, and have become just an absolute fan of Twin Lakes and wetlands and wildlife, and have been educated along the way. So some of the folks have been calling me more of a conservationist. Melissa Kendrick is our land planning and entitlement project manager. Alan Hill is our water attorney. Sometimes you'll hear him as Alan number 2. John Ferguson is our corporate attorney. Tom Marson, our civil engineer. Nathan, also a civil engineer. Ray is our licensed surveyor. David Blader is our geotech engineer. Craig Liss, water engineer. Heather Houston is our ecologist. And Joe and Jim are adventure concierge. And Marty Schlumberger is our construction advisor when we get to that point. So I'm gonna move from this screen and show you what we're talking about with the dashboard. And I'll go through this pretty quickly, but we have probably over, I'm guessing, over 700 pages that we have submitted of documents. And doing something like that and spending 4 years and a tremendous amount of money on a project means it can get overwhelming very quickly. So what we've done is we've come up with this dashboard. It has been an absolute lifesaver for us. Trying to make it a little bit bigger so you can see it here. And initially, of course, we had 37 conditions of approval. What we've done is we've taken these tasks or a condition of approval, put together a summary. We came up with a responsible party at Angelview that owns that, or the champion of that, that particular condition of approval. Referral agency contact. So it could be, you know, Ann and Paul primarily, but other folks as well. When it's applicable, we actually have a link directly to the codes. We can make it, this tool becomes really easy for us to keep track and know what the code says about a particular thing. The referral agency is the actual detailed explanation of the conditions of approval. And then we have a link to an Angelview resolution. This makes it really easy for us to process and to validate that we've actually met that condition of approval. So I'm going to give you an example of one rather than boring you because you've already heard all of these. But so here's one. The applicant shall resolve any outstanding concerns regarding the U.S. Forest Service letter received by staff from Patrick Mercer prior to final plat and furnished proof of resolution. And so we have, of course, a link to the code. We have a link to what the letter that that Patrick had sent in. And then we have, and I'm going to make it easy because this doesn't, let's see here. Give me a second here. No, I thought I had it right there. But anyway, then we go right to the proving it. So that particular one, I'm not going to pull up because it takes too long in Dropbox to get it to pull up. But it actually is over 80 pages long. So, you know, one response taking 80 pages is a little overwhelming for anybody. And we tend to, you know, we have this theory here at Angelview that if something is worth doing, it's worth overdoing. Oh, it actually just pulled up. So here's a summary of the letter that, or an email that Patrick sent back. And here's this 84 pages of information, including graphs, etc. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, of course, but it gives you the level of detail. And what this really describes for me is really this priority that we have made at Angelview. If someone has a concern, we're going to deal with it in an appropriate way. You know, there's people there that have been there for a long time and we're new. And so we want them to feel very comfortable that we have solved everything and to give them, you know, adequate, you know, response time, et cetera. So going back to the, let me go back to this. So that's what our dashboard is. We started out in March with 37 conditions of approval. We're down to 15. And we don't see any of these as an obstacle. We agree with all of them, and we will absolutely meet them by final plat approval. So water supply. Water supply is something that, of course, we have to have the potable water supply, but the other concern was really, you know, what are we going to be doing to the existing wells? There's some concerns, obviously, in the village. There's some concerns in Gordon Acres. And some wells that have issues and some septic systems that have issues. And will Angelview contribute to an existing problem? And so we've got Craig Liss and Alan number 2, Alan Hill, that will address this and most importantly, just remove any fears that might be out there. So go ahead, Craig, if you want to take lead on this for me.
Okay, actually with this first slide, Alan, Mr. Hill is going to be discussing the water supply and no cost and the potable plan for augmentation. So I'm going to pass it right back to Alan number 2.
Thank you, Craig. I would also for the record note that my law partner, Ashley Pollock, is on the Zoom call as well, just to reflect that. We filed an application on behalf of Angelview a little over a year ago for approval of 17 domestic wells and 2 commercial wells within the 70+ acre property to be augmented with water from Twin Lakes. We are moving forward with that application. We had 2 statements of opposition, one from the city of Aurora that's been resolved. As the staff report indicates, based upon the referral from the state, there are 2 issues that we think are remaining in that application with the state engineer, Division of Water Resources. One has to do with figuring out the appropriate depletion numbers for the accounting. Craig has been working on that with the state engineer and we're comfortable that that will be worked out quickly. The second one is that we have been relying on the augmentation supply numbers from Twin Lakes that are in a number of augmentation plans in the area. We got caught a little bit between the state and Twin Lakes in an analysis of what that yield will be in the future. We believe we're very close to resolving that issue with the state. Has to do with Colorado River water versus Arkansas River water and the storage in the reservoir and releases that can be made. We've made great progress on that issue and would hope to have first a referee's ruling and then a water court decree entered in the near future that will provide for approval of the domestic water supply to the 17 domestic lots and the 2 commercial lots. The underlying program for the domestic lots is that the 17 wells plus the 2 commercial wells would each be on individual septics. They would each be on individual wells. Approximately 90% of the in-house use goes back through non-evaporative septics, returns to the aquifer basically immediately, and any net depletion would be replaced with Twin Lakes water. That's a pretty typical plan for augmentation in the state of Colorado. The wells are scattered throughout the 70 acres. The septics will be approved consistent with local health department regulations. We're comfortable that the wells will provide the yields and the augmentation plan will be effective to allow the water supply to be reliable and consistent for the subdivision. The second application, which is not a condition of approval, has to do with keeping the ponds full on the property. State engineer substitute water supply plan is pending. We also have a water court application pending that would also use Twin Lakes water, replace the evaporation from those ponds and to keep the ponds full. We're just starting to work through that process, but the hope is that that will provide a reliable water supply so that the ponds can also flourish and remain full. I think that's a pretty good summary of where we are on the 2 water court applications and the progress we have with that. Craig, I'd throw it back to you to see if you have anything to add on that, and then maybe move it a little bit more toward any well interference or well impact issues.
Alan, I think you've covered that adequately. And so now we can move on to the next slide. And I just want to note that Angelview is sensitive to the communities with their concerns about water quality and water concerns. And that's why we're presenting this following information concerning impacts to existing wells. And the first part of the impacts, we're going to talk about depletions, which Alan has already mentioned that at full build out, the demand is 8.3 acre feet per year, but through the county approved non-evaporative systems, we'll have return flows of 6.84 acre feet. And that leaves a difference of 1.46 acre feet of actual depletions, which is replaced by the plan for augmentation. Now, if you look at the graph to the right, you can see there's a barely visible red line at the top labeled 1.46 acre feet. And that, what this graph is showing is that of the total groundwater in storage that we estimate to be in storage under the Angelview property itself, 546 acre feet, only the depletion is only 1.46 acre feet per year, which again is going to be replaced by the plan for augmentation in any event. You know, this shows that the amount of water in storage is nearly 375 times the amount to be depleted by Angelview. I also want to note that this 1.46 acre feet is equivalent to a depth of water of 1/4 inch over the Angelview property. And this is important since the average annual recharge to the aquifer from precipitation is estimated at 2.51 inches. That's 10 times the amount of Angelview consumptive use of 1/4 inch. And this demonstrates that a consumptive use will be recharged to the aquifer on an annual basis. Now we can move on to the next slide. We're going to discuss well interference. And the first thing I'd like you to note, by looking at the aerial photograph to the right, you can see the existing wells in the area, and then you can see Angelview and the planned number of wells to be on the Angelview property. Right off, I think you can see that the density of the wells to be drilled on the Angelview property is much less than what is currently going on in the existing development. Now to talk a little more on impacts, note that most of the wells are separated from Angelview by Bartlett Gulch. You can see the line running down towards Angelview and onto Twin Lakes. This mitigates effects from Angelview well pumping because the stream flow recharges the groundwater system. Now, furthermore, assuming that there was no recharge to the groundwater system for precipitation and stream flow, we've done some calculations that estimate the annual reductions in water level of the wells closest to Angelview would be about 6/100ths of an inch after a year of pumping. That is minimal. That's not observable, not measurable, so virtually no impacts. Now to summarize these two bullet points, I'd say, due to the aquifer recharge provided by Bartlett Gulch and the minimal effects of well pumping, there'll be no impacts to the majority of the wells, while the few wells closest to the Angelview will have no noticeable or measurable well interference impacts. Finally, I want to note that there will be no impacts to the Forest Service wells because those wells are at essentially the same level as the water in Twin Lakes. So the level of those wells is really affected more by the water in Twin Lakes than by any pumping that goes on over at Angelview. And that was all I had.
Okay, moving on to our adventure concierge and these cute little kids in the picture. Jim and Joe, would you like to take the floor for a little bit?
You bet. Hello. We're honored to be here. We thank you for everyone for showing up. If you don't know us, we're Jim and Joe Pustisi, and we're the adventure concierge for Angelview. And we also have dubbed our tagline also is that we're wetland conservation ambassadors because we will be doing a lot of education about the wetlands in the area and on Angelview. So with water being very important, I think it's important that we educate folks about the water, the use of water, where the water goes, where does it come from, and how can we steward the water and the wetlands in the Twin Lakes area. And we've had a home in the Twin Lakes area for the last 15 years, a little cabin there. So we love the Twin Lakes area.
Okay. Over these past years, we have fallen in love with what's now Angelview. When we heard it was purchased, we wanted to meet the new owners. Through many conversations, hikes, and lunches together, we realized that Alan has integrity, honesty, and is a conservationist. Diversity of Angelview's wetlands, fen, and rare and delicate flora and fauna will be preserved. 56 acres of Angelview will be undeveloped.
Mm-hmm. And so a little bit of our background, we're both public school educators. I have a master's degree in integrated natural science and have worked with the Division of Wildlife, which is the CPW now, and in kids outside and teaching teachers, adults outside in the field. So one of our passions is to get people outdoors. Oh, I'm sorry.
And I've been teaching 29 years, and I have a master's in experiential learning. Also work the Division of Wildlife. Jim and I are just kind of crazy about the outdoors and people learning to appreciate it and love it.
Yeah. All right. One of our passions is to take people outdoors and have them learning, connecting with family, connecting with the nature, connecting with their surrounding area. And eventually just fall in love with the place that they are in. Yeah, through building relationships with the Angelview homeowners, it'll give us an opportunity to provide them with experiences and education about their sense of place. So once somebody has a sense of place, they take care of the environment better. They're better stewards of where they're living and where they're recreating. So that's another positive about this. So we also want to have them create memories and leave a legacy for future generations as Angelview homeowners. So we aspire to have them be good stewards, preservationists, and so the second part of our job is as a resource. So we will be connecting them with service providers in the area, local businesses that will take them on adventures that would and which leads to just boosting the local economy. So thank you for letting us be here, and we're so excited to be a part of it. Angelview Concierge, and we look forward to more adventures.
Thank you, Chairman Joe.
Thanks.
Okay, so the highlights of Angelview, and there really were quite a few. It was hard for me to get this to one page, but so first off, we are 100% compliant with the zoning regulations and road standards. This has been a process to really understand the land and to do what's right by it. Melissa's going to take the slide looking at the preliminary plat here in a little bit and walk you through it, and you'll get it at that point. But we've taken so much care and concern to make sure that what we're doing at Angelview is right. We started out 4 years ago thinking that this needed to have 78 homes. Now we're down to 17, and that is the right mix. We walked into the preliminary plat stage in March and asked for a variance for the roads. And then I challenged our team to figure out a plan B. And what they did is, next to amazing, they actually eliminated a full acre that was dedicated to roads. So now we only have one primary road coming into Angelview, which is the right thing to do. The land dedication is something that those that know me know that it's kind of not if, but when we're going to have a fire in Twin Lakes. And so we want to do our part to help. All of our homes will be sprinklered, as Ann said. I think that's just a kind of a no-brainer in the mountains. We also wanted to maintain the key preservation of the features or vision of the project. So, having 17 lots, I think the average lot is 3.2 acres on 71 acres. We have this something called an area of influence. And what that is, that confines the homeowner, the landowner, to only build on 20% of their lot. That's not normally the case. Usually, larger homes will take up much more. We're restricting them. And by doing that, when you add the area of influence, the undevelopable area on every lot, you add the open space, we actually have 56 acres undeveloped, which is why it's hard for me to describe myself as a developer. We've really taken care to preserve and protect our existing lake, our ponds, and our wetlands. We have a wildlife corridor coming down, from Mount Elbert, going through David Smith's property to the wetlands and lake. And then we have we've got an amazing land use attorney, Bart Johnson, who has done a phenomenal job with our CC&Rs. Those are really the guidelines that the HOA will enforce and protect for years and years to come. As an example, we've heard lots of rumors out there, and it's kind of sad to me that some of the things that I hear, because it's a lack of confusion. One such rumor was that we were not going to sell the homes, we're going to build homes, and we're going to bring in Christians, and they were going to then Airbnb their property out for Christian events. That's not the case, and I think that confusion came when we were talking about an event center. Our HOAs and our CC&Rs actually restrict Airbnb. We won't allow a homeowner who will be there, they'll be second homeowners, maybe a month out of the year, but they cannot rent out their home. We think that detracts from the value of the neighborhood. We think it adds some additional security issues, so that won't be allowed. Fire protection and wildfire hazard plan. Adam told us that we were the first in Lake County to actually do this. And what we got back was a detailed report. I would encourage everybody to read it because, everywhere in Twin Lakes is really the same. And it is quite frightening what could happen. and will happen. So we have to understand it. We have to really protect it. And we're doing things like, for example, we've donated to the Southern Fire Station. We'd love to have an emergency services center at Angelview. We're going to have two 10,000 gallon cisterns at Angelview. I think there's only 3 emergency cisterns in all of Twin Lakes, and I think one of them isn't working very well, according to the fire department. We've also listened to our neighbors to the west. You know, they don't want homes right on top of them. So we've, even though our zoning allows for only a 20-foot setback, we've given 50-foot setbacks. So those are just the highlights that we could come up with for who is Angelview and what are we doing. All right, Melissa, let's get into the details of the plat itself.
Great, thank you, Alan. And thank you everybody for listening. I think even I, listening to all of this, recognize the complexity of a project like this, partly because of its location. But Alan's done a good job at sort of talking about how we're getting from the sketch plan to the preliminary plan. So I'm going to go into this in a little depth and talk about public safety as well. But before I do that, I want to just take a minute to talk a little bit more about my background. When I was first introduced to Alan, you know, I had to determine, like I always do, is this somebody that I can represent? And is this a project that I can support? And I recognized that it was the first time for me in my 25 years of working as a land use planner that I was going to be working in my own hometown, you know, my own home community, you know. And I knew that that was going to feel, and it does feel, intensely personal. You know, I have a huge stake in this place. And I know that reflects what it's like for many of you. You know, this may not have been your hometown, but it's the place you currently call home, at least for some of the year. And so, you know, this is intimate to me as well. So my grandparents, my great-grandparents moved to Twin Lakes, you know, at the turn of the century. And they helped establish the early village. They did things like help fund and construct Independence Pass. You know, this is a time, and these are people that they just did stuff, you know, and they made it happen. So my grandmother was born in Twin Lakes and was raised there. You know, she met my grandfather and they moved to Leadville, where my father was born, and subsequently where I was born. So that's 4 generations, not to mention my children, in this place and associated with this place. So this place really matters to me personally. But professionally, when I first toured the site, I was astounded to find the Hennessy cabins right there in the middle of this really beautiful property. And I had no idea, because the Hennessy cabins were at the bank, you know, they're on the original Twin Lakes, on the edge. And that's where we would go when I was a little bitty person. You know, that was, you know, where we boated and fished and the like. And here they are, those cabins are, you know, they got moved up when the lake was raised. And I recognized that this is a project that I could get behind, because Alan's vision has been to really to push the bar as high as we can in terms of how this land develops. And this is a tricky place because of the contours and the topography of the property. But what we've done here is look at a project, as you've heard a couple of times already, that's lower in density than it actually could be, that's very carefully placed these roads into locations. Yeah. The joy of Zoom, right? So the locations of the roadways, the very careful placement of these homes, and consequently the protection of the open space. So for me, yep. Okay, very good. So that's probably enough said about myself and this project. So this does dovetail very nicely to the preliminary plan that is in front of you right now. And so, Alan, you can kind of show where from the sketch plan to the preliminary plan, we had to move the access, this eastern access, like 250 feet. So the distance between our new access and the White Star campground was enough distance to meet CDOT's requirements. So it's a minor change, but it is a change. And so that road that Alan talked about, that is the only road that we have. It is a private road. It is tract H, I believe. And Alan, if you kind of run your cursor along that edge, you can kind of see what we're talking about. So it is actually in a tract. And our roads are, it's 32 feet in width. So we have two 12-foot lanes with 4-foot shoulders. So that meets, you know, really a local road standard. But this is a private road, so it'll be owned by the HOA and maintained by the HOA. The loop road, Alan, you can kind of show where it was, but initially the concept was a loop, and we were able to remove that late in the process when we realized it was really redundant. The next image I'll show shows you kind of how each of these lots has access through a driveway easement. This image also shows the secondary access. You can run your cursor along that, Alan. And so, yeah, there's our secondary access, and that goes further to the east, and it reaches all the way back. It doesn't show on this because it's off-site, but it comes back to the state highway eventually. And as Ann has said, that agreement is in place and it will be recorded at the time of final plat. The emergency service facility, you can show that site, that's tract E. It's the 2.1 acres. And I'll come back to that in a little more detail, but Ann's done a nice job at giving you some of that background. So I think that covers, oh, this shows the areas of influence. So Ellen, you can kind of show each of those as something like a hexagon, not really one, but so each of these, they have the odd shapes, partly because they're very carefully placed on the land. So we really looked at both how they relate to one another, how they relate to anything off-site. So I think that kind of covers this image, unless you have something else, Alan, that we should add.
The only thing I would say is that the additional 50-foot setbacks on the western side, you can see the difference between the west and the north.
Right. Right, and there was some concern that a house would be able to be too close to the property line because of its location in these areas of influence. So we made sure in the CCNRs that it specifically states that the building setback has to meet that 50 feet. So, and all required setbacks. All right, well, let's go to the next image.
Nathan, anything, did we miss anything on this one?
Nope, I think you captured everything. Good, yeah.
Okay,
good.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
All right, this image is important because of the driveway easements. And so we did a lot of work, with your staff and within our team, because you have regulations both for a road and for a driveway. So the dotted lines, Alan, you can kind of run your cursor along where these dotted lines, yeah, these are the driveways. And at the end, when we got done with this design that you're before you, they meet your regulations. And so they are each, they're 25-foot easements with a 12-foot drive lane on them. And they serve all of the lots within the subdivision where the road doesn't meet. And so they're very curvy because they reflect the topography of this site, which can be very steep in locations. So I think those are the high points for this image, Alan, unless you have something or somebody has something we should add at this point.
Why don't you discuss the community area, tract A, a little bit?
Right. So at one point in our process, that tract A was included in the open space tract. And we recognize that the community center, which is appropriately called now a clubhouse, it's a private clubhouse. Its only purpose, just like any other subdivision, is for like HOA meetings and birthday parties or Christmas parties for the homeowners within this subdivision. It is not to be rented out. And I think that's one of those places that maybe there's some confusion about, some misunderstanding, but right now it's a private clubhouse. And there is a location where there could be a future chapel. Alan, you can kind of show where that is also on Tract A. So consequently, we renamed this so that it's appropriate as a community, Tract A. So while it pulled out the area from the open space totals, it didn't change anything else. So most of this land area is left in open space. There's an easement across lot 10, that's sort of the end of lot 10. So all of that area where the lake is, you can't see it on a plat, but is protected. That's a lot of the wildlife corridor and so forth. So anything else you want to add to that, Alan?
Ask Bart, did we catch everything right here?
Let me unmute myself. Yeah, I think you covered all the high points, Alan, of the new design and features.
Okay.
So let's go to the emergency service facility, or center, depends on what you call it. But as you know, as has been pointed out by both Ann and Alan, you know, we did this fire mitigation plan. It points to the fact that we're in a severe fire danger area. And so, you know, knowing that we have to do a land dedication as part of a plat, we look to an emergency service facility to add that to the subdivision. And so in doing that, as Ann pointed out, you know, we had a challenge with the zoning. And I think she did a good job at summarizing it. You know, we looked at a code solution in working with staff. We said, really look at the use regulations and add it to the use regulations. And so what we've done is, you know, your code says you can have a safety service use in the county. And it's a conditional use. That's how it gets approved. But it gives you no standards for how to evaluate that use. So we had no standards to work with. Staff has no way to give you recommendations for, you know, is this an appropriate location, appropriate size, or anything. And so what we've done is really helped you solve a problem in the code, you know, from our perspective. And I think it's true that this doesn't just take care of Angelview, it takes care of the county and any other location where a safety service facility might be needed. And so that could be anything. What we're showing here is the idea of a small firehouse style facility where there are bays that could take, you know, could be ambulances, could be fire, you know, could be a truck, a water truck, it could be a boat, you know, it could be a lot of things, with the opportunity for a quarters for, you know, staff that might need to spend the night. You know, and again, it's a supplement to your larger Southern fire station. And it, you know, in time, your emergency responders are going to figure out what is the appropriate use here. And in the meantime, we believe the 2.1 acres is an appropriate size. And with the code amendment, it really allows that to happen in this location. So with that, I'm gonna stop so that we can finish this up. And I think I am passing this off to Bart, who's going to talk about the approval criteria. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, everyone. You know, Ann and her staff report did a pretty good job of going through the approval criteria. And I think staff has concluded that we meet all the criteria for preliminary plan approval. And the reasons for that are detailed pretty well in the staff report. So I'm not going to go through them in too much additional detail. There are some highlights I'd like to hit. Of the 6 criteria for approval, the first one is consistency with the comprehensive plan. And you know, this area of the county where Angelview is designated on the future land use map as the rural and remote area, where development is encouraged to be, if there's going to be development at all, that it be kind of low density residential development that takes into account the topography and characteristics of the land and is in, so many words, kind of preservationist oriented. And that's what Angelview is all about, is low density development that is tailored to the land. And, an immense amount of time has been spent between, wildfire analysis and engineering and hazard review to ensure that Angelview will be consistent with this land and will preserve large sections of it. I think that's perfectly consistent with a comprehensive plan. There's another important element of the Lake County Comprehensive Plan, and this was touched on a little bit by the Pustizis when they were talking about their idea for how the concierge program would work. And that's that the Lake County Comprehensive Plan has a whole section devoted to economic development and the need to bring new people and introduce them to the wonders of Lake County, frankly, where they'll come and spend their money. I mean, that's an important part of the Lake County Comprehensive Plan. And this project is obviously, tailored towards second homeowners. They don't have to be second homeowners, but that's the expectation, that many of them will be from out of state. And it will be attracting people who are new to the county. Hopefully will spend more time here, maybe become full-time residents, and bring their money with them and leave it behind in Lake County. Other elements of the approval criteria, the second one, which is critical, is we have to comply with the Land Development Code. And a big part of the work, as Alan mentioned, over the last few months has been redesigning the road system so that what was originally envisioned as a series of requested variances from the road standards would no longer be needed. So that was a critical part of the engineering work that's gone on over the last few months. And we've gotten to a point where the only variance being requested, which is for the trails being soft surface rather than impervious hard surface, which I think everyone agrees for a site like this, it would be much better to have soft surface trails than paved trails. And beyond that, we're meeting the minimum lot size requirements, the setback requirements, all the dimensional limitations. The homes will obviously comply with height restrictions, the requirements for sprinklers for homes in this area, and things like drainage easements to manage stormwater. All those are going to comply with the Lake County Land Development Code. The next criteria for approval is efficient spatial patterns. And this, this almost doesn't even apply to us because it really gets to wanting to prevent kind of weirdly phased projects where you might be platting in phases and have kind of leapfrog type development that doesn't make efficient use of the land. Now, this is a kind of a single phase plat with only 17 lots. It's not going to involve strange extensions of public infrastructure because all the infrastructure is private with this project. We have an internal private road system. And so we meet that criteria pretty easily. The next criteria is suitability for development. And again, this goes towards all the design work Alan has driven the team toward, is making sure that this development is consistent with the site and the site is suitable for the type of development that's being proposed. And, where Alan kind of came about this is let's figure out what the land gives us. And it's been an evolutionary process, but he basically listened to the land and made the development suitable to the land rather than thinking about how to make the land suitable for the development, if you follow me. So he's listening to the land, placing the homes where it makes sense for them to be, making the roads work in ways that are sensitive to the land but don't require variances. All that took a lot of work. And we've gotten to a point where there's a real harmony of what the land will carry and what will work there and what's being proposed. The next criteria is compatibility with surrounding land uses. And the surrounding land uses are either, basically public lands or low density residential development. And Angelview compares very favorably to that. It's going to be consistent with the public uses around the area, and it's actually probably less dense on a units per acre basis than much of Gordon Acres or the Village, which are the closest developments. And then, as you move down the highway closer to Leadville, there are some other developments, but those, most of those are old pre-1972 subdivisions with very small lots. And obviously Angelview is a big improvement on those types of older subdivisions for all kinds of reasons. And it's certainly compatible with those types of uses. Finally, we have a question of whether there are adequate facilities and services. Angelview is largely self-contained, has been explained. We'll be on a well and septic system that's going to be well engineered to serve the lots. We'll have power and telephone. It will be up to the individual owners to decide whether they would like to have LP gas or propane tanks, because there's not gas service in the area. And then the roads will be, as we mentioned, private. And so the county won't be spending money on road maintenance or snow plowing, that kind of thing, which is obviously a sensitivity as you get farther away from urban centers. And I think there's maybe one more approval criteria that isn't on this list, and it's consistency with the sketch plan. Anne covered this in her staff memo. We've kind of gone above and beyond the sketch plan and improved the project since the sketch plan was approved. So we're comfortably consistent with it and probably better than the sketch plan. And then I guess I'd like to wrap up by just reiterating something Alan said, and that's that staff has recommended a number of conditions of approval. Most of them are largely technical things, like providing for engineered foundations, even though the county normally doesn't require that. And certain things that have to be done with construction, like make sure we have Knox boxes at the entrance to the project so that emergency service vehicles can get through the gates without hesitation. All of those conditions of approval are acceptable. We have no issues with staff with those recommended conditions of approval. They will all make the project better. And many of those have already been incorporated into our documents. A lot of those conditions of approval ask for example, detailed plat notes covering things like the engineered foundations. Well, that we've already incorporated those into the plat, and staff even acknowledged that. So we're well on our way to complying with those conditions of approval. I think the most notable one that's still sitting out there that we've already discussed is the getting the water court decree that Alan Hill talked about. That's in process, and the issues are getting narrowed, and we're coming close to having that resolved. So with that, I think Alan, you probably maybe want to say a couple of concluding remarks, but I think we're otherwise done.
No, I really appreciate everyone that's, the Angelview team that's worked so hard, over the years, and then the county working with Paul and Ann has been quite a joy. We've become close friends throughout the process, even though they're doing their job and holding us accountable, and we appreciate that as well. I think this has been absolutely a situation where it's been compatible in every way. So we appreciate the county, we appreciate our neighbors, and hopefully the neighbors are starting to get a little more comfortable with us as well. So anyway, thank you so much. I appreciate it, and we're wrapped up from this point, this stage of the game anyway. So.
Great, thank you. At this time, I will ask if Planning Commission or County Commissioners have any questions for the applicant before we open up to public comment. Commissioner Fiedler, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, thanks, and didn't mean to jump on any planning commission members. But yeah, let me, so thanks for all the detail and presentations from staff and the applicants. I had a question. I was trying to get my head around the proposed emergency services facility and wasn't sure sort of where things stood with that. From some of the materials, it seemed like, well, I guess, yeah, if you elaborate, is that something that you would think of building anyway for the community, and then there would be like some mutual aid agreement with county, fire and emergency services, or is this like land or a facility that will come to the county? I'm just sort of curious, like, where's the equipment coming from? Where's the staffing coming from? How is this going to coordinate? So I guess, so the general question is, oh, and also I did notice, I think in the letter to the Housing Coalition, it mentioned that there might be staff housing as part of that facility. So I wasn't sure if that was like a thought or or something that would happen, and which is that, again, is that community staff or county staff? And I guess sort of as I'm trying to get my head around the criteria we're working with here, maybe some specific questions that I can come back to these if I'm rambling on too much of it, is just looking at the criteria in that section of the code on reservation and dedication of public sites and the state statute. And it seems like that, by state statute is tied pretty closely to like parks and open space. And while I'd love it to be broader by the subdivision code, it didn't seem to me immediately that emergency services fit within the criteria we're working with here. And then also, I think sort of related to that, the criteria down below is that land, or the land dedicated is suitable and usable. And then, if we have to go through a zoning or code amendment to make it usable, just want to have us discuss that or put that on the table for the Planning Commission to consider, whether we're meeting the suitable and usable language if we do have to go through a zone amendment, and if a public facility is within a gated community. And then I guess just sort of related to that, again, like I'm, trying to get my head around the criteria we're working with here, is whether we would want to consider instead a payment in lieu, to dedicate to, again, as I read it, the acquisition and development of land, for open space, recreation, et cetera, before going to final plat. So yeah, sorry for a very long question, but I was just trying to get my head around all the different statute and code requirements and what was in the staff report and the applicant materials around the emergency services facility, and that 2.1 acres potentially dedicated for that.
I guess, Anne, do you want to start or do you want me to start?
You go ahead, Melissa.
Okay. This is part of the challenge of Zoom. So I'm going to lead off, and then my team can back me up. But the emergency service facility, the dedication is for only land. If I understood your question correctly, it isn't the facility. Alan is very likely to help contribute to that facility in the future, but the dedication is for land. And it was, staff brought to us the request for an emergency, for us to consider an emergency service facility in this location. And I think it's due to all of the issues that you have spoken to. But in at sketch plan, we were looking at a different location. And when we came back without it in our plan, they were like, we would like to see that. So that's part of how we got to the land dedication and the location of it. And it is within a gated community. So the Knox box would be absolutely critical in its ability to respond, the site itself. But, I think it's left to people a lot smarter than I am to figure out, is this a garage for a boat, you know, that's desperately needed on Twin Lakes, or you know, ambulance facility, or is there really a need for something like a substation? And to that point, I think you were asking about, you know, we talked about living quarters, because if people are out there in a snowstorm, they may not even be able to get home themselves. And so, you know, being able to, you know, if you have people on for 24 hours, they need a place to sleep. So it's, I don't think we consider that exactly, you know, addressing the affordable housing issue, but it is providing a place, a living quarters for a short period of time. So the suitable and usable aspect of it, you know, our engineering group has designed an emergency service facility on 1/2 acre. So 2.1 acres is more than enough to do any one of these things, depending on what is needed by the community. Where we got into a little bit had to do with, you know, the utilities. Can you have a well and a septic system on this site? So that's part of what drove this, as well as the code says in recreational zoning, you have to have 3 acres. Well, that's really a residential standard. So the draft regulations, and I appreciate your question. I would have the same question, I think. What do these draft regulations say even? But they do help give us direction when you're able to review those for the location, the access, the utilities, and so forth for a safety service facility. So I don't know, Bart, do you want to add anything to my comments?
Sure. I thought I was on mute. I guess I wasn't. Yeah, Mr. Field, you're correct that the state statute and the county regulations generally anticipate park and kind of recreation use dedications falling under this category, and this is obviously different than that. As we read those regulations, they're suggestive of those uses, and those would be the preference, but they're not limited to it. And you know, this site is a little bit different in that, you know, in your conventional subdivision, the type that's contemplated by the state statute, you know, you're thinking of large subdivisions in urban areas where the lots are relatively small and there's a need for parks to serve the community or recreational facilities to serve the community. And in a conventional subdivision, those would get dedicated to the public and built out by the developer as part of the subdivision improvement process so that the kids have a pocket park or playground and stuff like that. And obviously they're public and other people could use them, but they're essentially to meet the demand that you're creating. And this site is not your conventional subdivision. It's largely already kind of preserved for kind of recreational and preservationist uses. And there's a large wetlands. There's going to be a trail system through the property that will serve the occupants. And so those kind of recreational needs will already be met. And so rather than having kind of just a gratuitous recreational grant of a separate parcel, when we were talking with staff, you know, the idea that, and it may not be next year, but in the future, this area of Lake County could really use an emergency services facility that could be a combination of ambulance, fire, maybe mountain rescue up towards the pass. And that hasn't taken shape yet. And there's also the idea you asked about staff housing, that just like with many fire departments, you could easily envision some on-site staffing for people who would be there while they're on call, or however that's working. I know where I live in Garfield County, outside of Carbondale, we have a couple of remote fire stations, and people don't live there all the time, at least one person, but they live there while they're on call for that, you know, 3-day period or what have you. And so the emergency services facility right now is a concept, and the idea was, let's get the land in public hands and dedicate it so that it's available. As the concept gets fleshed out in the future, there will be a place for it to land. So that's the idea.
Did we answer your question, Jeff?
Yeah, no, that's helpful just to see how it's going. I just, again, trying to read through all the code and just want to make sure we're not calling something that isn't, that, I don't know, someone could poke a finger at.
Okay, do we have any other questions from Planning Commission or County Commissioners?
Yeah, I do have a follow-up. Sorry, can I?
Yes.
Ask? Thanks. So on that, I guess I'm a little confused. If it's dedicated for a potential public use, but not actually dedicated to the county, I don't think, because we're not as a public. It's not going to be county land, correct?
I think our plan was to dedicate it to the county, unless there's another governmental jurisdiction that you would prefer it be dedicated to, like the fire district.
Okay, I think I just needed a reminder of what that conversation was. And then I guess I then have a question of how that interacts with the overall subdivision HOA requirements. And what would be required by the county to maintain that? Because I guess I mean, as you said, Bart, I think this is different than a more densely populated urban kind of setting. So just trying to remember what those conversations were beforehand and how the Planning Commission and board came to that conclusion.
Yeah. Bart, do you want to answer the HOA question?
The HOA does have a design review process that I think Alan would envision that that the design of the building would be consistent with that. But and then the CC&Rs of the county where you accept that dedication would obviously have to acknowledge that those community service uses would be permitted on that tract, which we have no issue with. As far as maintenance, once I think development of a building like that would obviously have to include plans for how it would be maintained. And that would just be by virtue, I mean, that would just have to be taken into account at the time it was built. If I understood your question there, I mean, it's not something the homeowners association would plan to maintain unless at the time they all agree that makes sense to contribute somehow to it.
No, I think that's a little helpful. And I also, what I remember, and I think Commissioner Fiedler was not on the board when we heard our first sketch plan hearing. So just to remember that. And also what I remember stating at the last hearing, just a kind of a point of liability and clear expectations of, dedicating this space with the idea of an emergency services, somehow supporting emergency services is not necessarily the promise of the county to kind of create that and or be able to increase our response time any more than we are trying to do with potentially the second fire station construction. But looks like Commissioner Marcella has her hand up.
Thanks, Sarah, or Commissioner Mudge. Yeah, I think I just wanted to have a little bit of clarification that with that land being designated to the county, what that looks like in a gated community in terms of public use for public land. And if it is dedicated for an emergency services site, we have a really large lift going into the construction of the Southern Fire Station. And so emergency services is a great idea. I just would not want to put us in a position where, as Commissioner Mudge said, we would be, have our hands tied in staffing that for a gated community.
I think a couple of points that I'd like to make is first, dedication of the land to the county, it's not our intent, and I don't know that we could, even if we wanted to, require the county to do anything, by a particular time frame or build a certain type of facility, or it creates an opportunity, but not an obligation. And the facility, though it would be beneficial to Angelview to have it that close, obviously within the gates even, it's not intended to be a facility that would just be for Angelview. It would be for that entire region of the county. It's just a matter of where we put it. And if we could have an access directly from 82 into a facility like that, that would make a lot of sense, but the topography doesn't lend itself to that. There's a lot of steep slopes coming down to the highway from those kind of middle areas of Angelview. And I'll point out that the sketch plan didn't include this. So this is kind of a new concept. It's something that had been talked about during the sketch plan process, actually in a different location, but it didn't have any legs at that time. And there wasn't a lot of, it didn't seem to get anybody's attention. So it wasn't part of the program at that point. And then we were asked to revisit the idea of dedicating some public land. And so this particular open space site, after a lot of investigation, it looked like it would make sense to take it out of the open space calculation and make it this public land grant. So that's a little bit of the history.
To expand a little bit on that, just one thought that's coming to mind is, I think what the commissioners are saying here is that, they don't necessarily foresee in the immediate future the ability to fund such construction and or creation of this service facility. If the land becomes dedicated to the county immediately, and let's say 10 years down the road, you have a whole new set of commissioners and nothing's happened with that land, is there some sort of covenant that's attached to this land that it can only be used for that? And if that's the case, does the county want to take on that dedication? So I guess those are a couple of questions as far as what the thoughts are. If the county can't or doesn't build a service, emergency services facilities on this piece of land, what does that look like?
Mm-hmm. And do you want to step into this a little bit? I mean, I believe when we will convey the property to the county, and the like Bart said, if that were the fire district, but the intent would be to the county, so it would be in your ownership. But you might want to add to that, Anne.
Sure. So I think Bart's description of this as an opportunity and not an obligation is probably, I think, really kind of helps understand it a little bit better. So this dedication will be present, creating an opportunity, but through the conditional use permit process, when it is fully vetted and a site or a structure is going to be proposed. So first, creating the opportunity, then the code amendment would have to happen to even be able to consider the facility there. And through the code amendment, if it's successful, then the opportunity lives on. And through that opportunity, then would come the conditional use permit, which could be pulled by a private individual asking to put in a collaboration with the county of how the project is funded, staffed. Those are all very outstanding issues. I don't believe it is the intent of the developer, and I think we can be very intentional that this is an opportunity, a dedication based on an opportunity and not an obligation. I think that through the stakeholder meeting that was held about this potential of this facility, I think there was a great emphasis from everyone that the Southern Fire Station is first priority, well-known first priority of the county, and that definitely heard Commissioner Mudge at Sketch. You know, she brought up very relevant points that the county does not feel at this time that they'd want to entertain a situation of an obligation because their first priority is their current project, and that is must be very, very clear through this process that the county is not obligated on a timeline, a structure. None of those things have been sorted out at this point, and they would have to all come together when whatever entity would want to move forward with this opportunity through the conditional use process. And through that process, whomever looks to seek taking the opportunity, they would have to bring all those pieces together in conjunction with the county as the landholder. The county as the landholder would allow this to happen on the site in an agreement and in collaboration if it wasn't the county with a third party. Does that clarification help at all? But
I think what I was trying to get at was more of it's definitely a what if scenario, but I think it should be considered is, let's say 7 years from now, nothing's happened with that parcel, but the county sees that as one of the parcels in their long slew of county owned parcels, and they have some other idea that they want to do with that piece of property other than put in a service station. What are the thoughts on that? Because I think that if there's going to be a expectation that the only way the county uses that piece of land is if they're putting in a service facility, then that needs to be somehow memorialized through this process. And maybe it already is somehow being done that way, but I think it needs to be really clear that the county is taking on a piece of land and that is the only thing that they can do with that piece of land. Or does the community, Angelview community, you know, leave that up to the county to decide if someday they decide a better uses for it? So I think that's my question I think everybody's talking about this emergency services facility, but the county doesn't necessarily see that in the immediate future. And so my question is, what if it isn't, but it's something different?
Yeah, Heather, I think that really very well articulates my concern is, you know, it's a public parcel inside of a gated community. And if we're tied to only an emergency services use, you know, it took us this long to get our Southern Fire Station off the ground as it is. And I just feel like it wouldn't necessarily be something that we would recognize in an update to our comprehensive plan at this point. Since we're hitting that milestone in our comprehensive plan right now with the building of the current Southern Fire Station. And so I would just encourage some more detail to be left on that parcel and the use of that parcel, because if it's a publicly owned space, you know, we don't want to, you know, have the county come in and put like a public works facility in there for county public works inside of a gated community. You know what I mean? I really think that long-term plan needs to be thought out, because I don't even think in 10 years that would be something that would cross anybody's mind to build an additional fire station in that community. I just think a little more detail would be helpful.
Can I interject here?
Sure.
If you look at the demographics, most people recreate in Southern Lake County. Your emergencies are in Southern Lake County. Up the pass, accidents, up the pass with La Plata, Mount Elbert, there are several accidents a year that if the response time from a facility in Twin Lakes would probably be the best. It would save lives. It would save people. And being so far away still from the fire station number 2 in Twin Lakes, that's still, I'm speaking as a homeowner, that's still a little concerning to me. And with a emergency facility there right in Twin Lakes, not only for the lake, if you had a boat there, we've had several people get stranded on the lake supboarding when the storms come up in the afternoon. So I'm just as a homeowner, I'm just saying, really consider that land being put to use for something of that nature, because
yeah,
super important.
I think that's a great point. I just think that would be something that the county would very carefully have to consider in any capital improvements planning with the current investment in the South, you know.
Yeah, I understand that, but there's also user fees. There's ways to
So I think that's one piece that probably needs some continued discussion. And I don't know if it's something that we put together as a, I mean, I guess I would like to hear from the commissioners who are going to take on this decision a little bit more. So if the thought right now is, you know, yes, we like the idea of this piece of property being dedicated, or we would rather see it be something that is on the table later on down the road, or how at this moment, this juncture, what would you propose the thought on that use be?
Heather, this is Kayla. I think at this juncture, I would be hesitant to enter into any kind of agreement with that dedication without some further information or further conversation with the subdivision itself on potential uses in the future. If there's a determination that a fire station isn't feasible, or an emergency services station isn't feasible, or something of that manner. But I think that it's a little preliminary for us to make that dedication without a solid plan.
I wonder if we, well, and can you remind me, I pulled up the lot and that map. Which tract is it again? Or lot?
It's tract E. Anne, do you have that, or Alan, do you want us to put it back up?
Heather, are we still in presentation, or did we move on to like comments? And
we are not in the public comment, but this is where I'm asking county commissioners and planning commission to ask applicant questions. And so that's where these questions have come out of.
Thank you.
And maybe we can just be more broad to dedicate the property for necessary public use as decided in the future.
I guess I should interject here just to make sure we're on the same page, or there's no confusion, is that it is Alan's intent that would be dedicated for some type of emergency services use, not just any public use. I don't think the expectation would be, for example, to have a maintenance facility for snow plows or something like that, just because it would start to get incompatible with the surrounding residential uses. That would be the concern. I just want to make sure I don't want any confusion there.
Thanks, I appreciate that, and I apologize for cutting you off, Bart, or Mr. Johnson, my apologies.
You can call me Bart.
Thanks. But I think Jim made a great point about rescues, and so I wonder if that truly is the intent for that parcel to be used for emergency services in some capacity. Could you potentially add some detail of what emergency services would be acceptable to the use of that parcel? Like, would it be acceptable use of that parcel for search and rescue instead of like in a full-on firehouse? Would it be, acceptable for us to maintain some search and rescue equipment as, that concern of the rescues being happening and emergencies happening in the southern end of the county? Would that be an appropriate use? But absolutely. I think maybe in order for us to really protect and preserve that, if that's the intent going forward, that level of detail should be spelled out in the dedication potentially.
Great. Alan, did you want to add something?
I absolutely. We need to get the stakeholders involved and the experts involved that really can guide us. Having having studied this, this fire mitigation plan, it is frightening what we are going to be dealing with. And I think it's absolutely important for us to figure out what's important. Having a park when you're surrounded by national forests doesn't make sense, obviously. But having some way to save lives is really important. I've been, banging that drum for a long time, including donating money to the Southern Fire Station. It's not adequate for Lake County. It's just not. And I think we need to do our part. So we're willing to do that. And whatever that might be, if it's just a search and rescue, that's a starting point. But I'd like to do a whole lot more. I also don't want to, be on a recorded line and say I'm going to be donating money, but the possibility is there. I mean, I really care about this. I don't want to see our forests go up. I don't want to see, our neighbors to the west at Gordon Acres with one way in and one way out get stuck. We need to work together, and this is a starting point.
Yeah. So to the commissioner's points, I think we obviously need to do some work with staff as we bring this back to you at final plat, so that we have clarification on what it can and can't be, and that would be acceptable to everybody involved.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, I see Paul Clarkson with his hand up.
Thank you. Let me figure out how to take it down. I have a question for the team, and particularly for you, Mr. Hill. You mentioned 17 household wells and 2 commercial wells. Could you expound on those 2 commercial wells?
Yes, the proposed water court decree, if you're not a residential well, it has to be called a commercial well, but the 2 proposed uses in the water court decree are for a chapel or private community center or private clubhouse. There will be 2 of those 3 as a maximum. And I think as Alan Elias said earlier, the private community center, the private clubhouse would be for the residents within there. So it does say 2 commercial wells, but it's narrowly defined in the water court decree or proposed decree to limit it to chapel, private community center, private clubhouse. We have to demonstrate to the state exactly what the demands are for that. So those would be the possible combinations for the 2 commercial wells.
Thank you. I was hoping to get some clarification for the decision makers here and the community. Do you have any timeline on that yet? On when the water court may approve that?
I hope we're within a matter of a couple of weeks. We are working with the Attorney General's office. The state is in the case. We are working with Twin Lakes. This is probably a little over the top in information, but the state and Twin Lakes are having discussions back and forth about how Twin Lakes operates, and they're both trying to figure out what the other side is interested in. We're confident, regardless, that there's plenty of water for us to augment with, but they both need to come to a little agreement, and then we'll follow right behind that with whatever they tell us we need to put in the decree as far as the administrative process for Twin Lakes releases. So our hope is that in the next couple of weeks, we will have the state signed off on a form of the ruling. We'll submit that to the water referee, and then a few weeks after that, we will have a water court decree. But we're a year into this and have resolved many, many issues. We're down to a couple that have gotten a little more complex because there's an additional party with Twin Lakes involved in that. But we're confident that it will all get resolved, hopefully within the next few weeks.
Thank you very much.
Okay, any other questions from Planning Commission or County Commissioners? Okay, any public members who wish to, and I'm sorry, I probably should have said this earlier, but would like to make public comment, if you could please, we'll start with raising hand. And when you start, when I call on you, please say your full name and your address, or you can put that in the chat as well to Anne so that she can record that for public comment.
Heather, I have quite a few people that have pre-registered.
Okay, perfect.
Would you like me to call out that list and we can start that way? And then anyone that I've missed that I don't call your name and you have an opportunity, then you're welcome to raise your hand and we'll get you your opportunity. So I have John Kester.
John Kester, are you on?
How about that? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So my name is John Kester. I live in Twin Lakes. I'm not part of Gordon Acres, but my property is right next to Alan Elias's property. And for the last few years, we have had questions and discussions and people getting upset about where the water is going. And it would really be great if we got some hard copy resolution of that, the water situation, specifically with Bartlett Gulch. Bartlett Gulch goes through my property in two different places. And I was told a number of years ago now that there had to be some evaluation of that, of the water flow through in Bartlett Gulch that are flowing through property, my property, and Alan Elias's property now. He's now purchased additional land, and he and his workers are modifying the wetlands that are right there. And I'd like to see what's going to happen with that. That's my most important input. I have nothing against Alan Elias's ability or his rights to build a subdivision. But I think he needs to still look closer at the water situation. Thank you.
Yeah, Anne, are you going to cover that one? Sorry.
No, actually, I just wanted to give the team an opportunity to respond.
Okay, great. Craig List, do you want to respond to that?
Certainly. We've been in discussions with the Division of Water Resources, Water Division 2, about the flow in Bartlett Gulch. We submitted documents to them several months back, demonstrating our opinion that water flowed in two different channels, essentially, that they split off and went in two different directions. And at this point, the division office has agreed that water flows in both directions. And that's, if you're familiar with the area, it's just on the edge of David Smith's property, where it splits and goes in these two different directions. One side fills a big pond, a beaver pond on David Smith's property, and the other side heads down to Twin Lakes. The Division of Water Resources makes that decision, though, in the long run. That's not a decision that a private entity, a private citizen makes. But that's where they are so far.
Thank you. The next member of the public that we have is Kelly Sweeney.
Sorry, Ann. I'm trying to hit the unmute button. I don't have anything. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Kelly. I have Larry Markham.
Hi, thanks. Mine kind of tags on to. Hang on, we've got a little feedback loop going here. Thank you. Okay. Okay, try that again. Apologies. Mine tags on to John's question. What I'm wondering is, in order to fill those ponds, does the process include trespassing upon and diverting water from other people's property, like the neighbors?
Larry, is that the extent of your question?
Oh, shit.
So we won't have dialogue back and forth as far as questions. If you want to make a public comment and include questions in there, then what we'll do is once you're done with your public comment, we can ask applicant to respond from there.
Well, I guess my public comment is that it seems inappropriate to trespass on neighbors' land and divert their water.
Thank you, Larry.
And are you expecting?
And now you're muted.
Yeah, you're muted.
I'm so sorry. Next, we have Jan Morzel.
Sorry, now we are. Okay, how about wait. Oh, okay. Can you hear me now? Yes. I have a comment and also a question there. So I don't envy the commissioners to decide on this because, you know, one of the main Lake County development codes prescribes that supposedly growth is managed to improve quality of life, protect and enhance the county's natural and visual environment, and also encourage agricultural, business, commerce, and economic development. And so in my mind, actually, the proposed density is exactly the wrong density, the only density we really don't want. Either you are closer to services, like in Twin Lakes, where I live, or you really have very, very large properties with little cabins. And so I'm thinking of the immediate neighbor of the Angelview development, who owns, I think, close to 70 acres and has a little 1,100 square foot cabin. So I call that a true conservationist. In the proposed development, you are sacrificing almost an acre of forest land for each building. You know, as far as I can tell from your numbers, 14 acres for 17 houses. So that's a really large amount of impact, actually. And so I look at it as simply a business proposal, which is fine. Anybody can propose business developments, whether you want to mine or log or build houses, but it is really a pro-profit development. And so now you are sitting there seeing what is appropriate and what can the land sustain. Water and sewer are big issues, and who knows how the water court will decide. There are a lot of very admirable and amazing proposals and ideas that Alan and his team have worked on. And I still wonder if it is not possible to have actually a phased development. And so that is my question after my comment. Since they propose that there wouldn't be much of a visual impact, since they propose they will build carefully their roads, since they propose small impact areas, since they propose, I don't know what house size actually, I thought it was like 5,000 square feet. Why not demonstrate you can actually do that all and have water and have leach fields, maybe just, you know, for a quarter of the development, and then everybody can see, oh yeah, this developer can do what he proposes or they cannot. We have gone through a pandemic. We have gone through downturns in real estate in the past. nobody knows what the next several years brings. I think we definitely don't want to end up with 15 acres of disturbed forest land and then suddenly somebody walks away from it. So would the commissioners be willing to support a phased development? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jan. Next we have Lyle Williams.
Okay, have you got me now? Okay, I'm Lyle Williams and I live at 5910 County Road 10. And I've been a full-time resident of Twin Lakes for 5 years now. And my background is 37 years of residential construction in Denver before I retired. Couple of things that come to mind. First of all is I fully support Angelview and Alan Elias. And the reason I support them is I see this development as a way to protect that mountain from the kind of development that you're seeing in Pan Arc right now. And so I can see a lot of the Pan Arc development from my house. And I see what they're doing to the side of that mountain in basically creating a high density subdivision. And if I had one wish, I would wish that the commissioners could change the code in such a way to cover those little bitty half-acre lots with their septic systems and all the junk that's going on up there. Alan's doing it right. And the other thing is Alan's not doing anything any different than what I have or what John Kester has or all of these $1 million plus homes that have been built around here in the last 2 years. I mean, these things are being built all over the place. And I don't know why they're not taking the kind of heat that Alan's taking, because I think Ann could answer this question, but how many homes are being built right now in this valley? But yet nobody's taking any heat for that development. It's only Alan. And I really don't think that the residents of Twin Lakes are playing fair. Anyway, that's my only comment. I would like to see Pan Arc held to the dark sky standards, because I really don't like that. So anyway, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Lyle. Next we have John Grubbs.
Thank you. I have no comments.
Chuck Fleener.
Yes, my name is Chuck Fleener. I am living in Switzerland right now. Actually, I'm here in Twin Lakes for the next 3 months. And I want to be here full time in 18 months, and I'll be here. My family and I have been vacationing for over 50 years. I'm now an owner of a nice spot here, and that was always on my bucket list. So I'm very, very happy to be here. I do agree with Larry's comments, 100%. I do support the sparse development versus the big development like we've seen in Dillon and other places. My job in this whole thing is the emergency egress from Angelview out through my driveway, and I'm more than happy to do that. In my opinion, just to go fast, the idea was to go from 78 homes down to 17. And I think that the initial pushback from the village was 100% right, because 78 homes on 78 acres would have just been way too much. I think that the focus needs to be on the open space and the animals, the 56 acres for the animals. I do know that I see mountain lions, deer, fox, elk all of the time here. And that should be the focus on what we have in the future. I do support Alan. I think that he's going to do a good job in this. He has always done what he said he's going to do. And until he gives us a reason not to believe him, I think that we should. And that's really what I have to say. Thank you.
Jim and Joe, would you, you did sign up to speak at public comment.
I totally agree with Lyle. We have had awesome experiences with Alan. Like I said, his integrity is great. He's honest. He follows through. He's doing the right thing. There could be someone else that had bought it and put condos and townhomes and I don't know what there, but.
Yeah, this is, growth is going to come, and this is responsible growth. And, you know, it's still preserving the beauty of Twin Lakes. At the same time, it's going to provide economic growth. And what else can I say except we
think it's great. We're behind Alan.
Yeah, we're behind Alan, and we think it's great. And
thank you. Amy Haywood, you had been in the chat, and I want to give you an opportunity to speak if you would like.
No, thank you.
Okay. That concludes, Heather, everyone that we had. If I've missed someone that emailed me, I apologize, but please feel free to raise your hand now if I haven't called you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. My name is Andrew Williams. I'm sorry to interrupt. I am not on the Zoom. I can't do the Zoom. I'm on my cell phone, so I'd like to be in the list. I did email last week as well.
Okay, Andrew, and your address, please. You can, since you can't do it, you're on your cell phone, can you just give me your address really quick?
Yeah, I live at 6201 East State Highway 82. I am on the west end of Angelview. My property driveway enters onto Highway 82 directly.
Go ahead, Andrew.
May I speak?
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, first of all, I'd like to start with thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I'll try to make this as quickly as possible, and I'm probably going to talk fast here because there's a lot in my mind to cover now. You're talking 56 acres of open space and half-acre footprints. Extremely appropriate considering what could be done or else done with that. And I want to bring up something else. I noticed last fall, driving home from work, you can notice all the new buildings going up in Panarch along Highway 82. And we're talking big houses. So yes, to me, I don't know the actual numbers, but there is lots of growth going on in this region, even all the way down from here to Salida, Leadville, etc. It's happening. I look out my window, I see last summer, the lake, Twin Lakes itself actually to me turned into a beach. I see more paddle boarders on that lake than I do boats. I've seen bike rentals go up. I've seen boat rentals, paddle boards, kayak rentals go up. That's nice. I respect that. More importantly, I am a full-time resident here. I've been in Lake County for about 7 years now and out here over 5. My youngest is a 4-year-old daughter. This is where I want to raise her and what I want to instill in her. And what's important to me is safety, because I'm in a remote area. I consider this remote. I mean, if you're in Alaska or New Zealand, different story. But I want to point out to the commissioners that last summer, I got stung by a bee. I'm allergic to bees. My EpiPen didn't work. I had 2 choices. One was to hit the emergency button on my alarm system here and wait and call 911, and I did. I actually had to drive myself in to Lake County to the hospital as fast as I could. You know, everybody that knows that is a dangerous situation for myself and for other pedestrians on the road as well. But my intuition told me I need to get in there and focus on my breathing from swelling up. So I strongly encourage and as a homeowner support an emergency service station. Yes, we have the South Fire Station going in. But one key component I want to bring up is we don't always have Highway 82 plowed as a priority. Now, I'm not saying I read that somewhere. From my own observation from leaving for work and coming home, it only gets plowed to me is what I would consider a secondary, obligation, meaning the other highways are priority because of when the Highway 82 is closed in the winter, the pass. So yes, having the South Fire Station brings emergency services closer to us, but correct me if I'm wrong, many moons ago, there used to be a fire station here. There used to be a service here. And that was then with less population and less things going on with businesses. Now look where we're at right now. I could go on. And just because you have the South Fire Station doesn't mean it stops at the village of Twin Lakes. We still got to consider the past. And that was brought up in this conversation. There's a lot that goes on, and there's more use of this land out here from a recreation point of view with camping and all that. And the fire mitigation that was done, that report, to me, it's a matter of hearing what neighbors are saying and talking to your neighbor, but it's actually taking the actual facts, the actual reports, and reading through them thoroughly and understanding what's going on here rather than just assuming things. So I look at how we have over 400-year and plus growth trees. Now, in places like Lake County and stuff, you have a lot of lodgepole and beetle kill. I don't know exactly what our beetle kill ratio is, but compared to other areas, it doesn't appear to be as much. But we have a lot of sage on the ground. Recently, in recent weeks, we had what I would call a brush fire across from Highway 82 on the upper lake. I was outside doing stuff around my house, and I had someone pull up my driveway in a panic. And they're like, I think there's a fire over there. And I looked. And as I was looking at it, I watched it build up quickly. I got my butt down to the lake down there. And the winds that day were blowing off the lake from the south to the north. Out here, the winds usually blow west, east, and sometimes east to west, depending on the time of year and all the variables. Long story short, I got down there and I got in the water down the beaver ponds, and I took my sweatshirt off and I kept on wetting it to draw a line along one of the ditches down there. What seemed, and I know when there's a panic situation, minutes seem like hours, but it still took a while. Even if the Southern Station was up and active, it would still take a long time to respond. And I'm not an expert, but I have common sense. The more the merrier. It's not if we need an emergency service station, we need, and I'm willing to volunteer as a neighbor, as a homeowner, to do fundraising, to do any type of voluntarily work, even to get my credits going back for rescue. All that stuff is important to me, especially having to raise a family here. And so I just wanted to point out that I feel that Alan is doing a wonderful job. He takes the time to listen to you. Before I knew who Alan was, I was talking to my neighbors and I was down in the village talking to people who had their concerns. Yeah.
Andrew, can you please wrap up your comments? You're beyond 3 minutes. If you could just kind of give us a final statement, that'd be great.
What I'm saying is I feel that it's more, the development is within the regulations above and beyond anything I've ever seen in Colorado. I think it respects the land, and I think Alan has a wonderful team of very smart and well-educated people that are presenting precise facts. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have any other public comment?
Okay, at this time, I think I have a note from Commissioner Mudge that she would like to speak to the water just for a minute.
Thank you, Heather. Yeah, I would just want to kind of reiterate that the land use, the water issue is kind of ancillary to the land use issue, and I don't have a problem with the density proposed. But I want to make it very clear to everybody on the line that the county and the division are well aware of the channels versus the ditches and the source of the water and the source of or site of the diversion on Forest Service property. the county will be participating in those conversations and is participating in the resume submitted for Angelview because we need to protect the water right of the county. And there will be specific requirements should Angelview be awarded any kind of ability to divert water that would require a minimum flow down Bartlett Gulch. So I just wanted to make it clear that the county's been keeping track of the resumes that have been submitted to the Division of Water Resources. I believe, though I am not a water attorney, Alan can probably make this project happen. He just needs to augment the water. And he can do that through various ways, one of which could be the Lake County Augmentation Plan when we get administration rolling. And the ponds are currently covered by a substitute water supply plan, and that's a separate legal application than the application for the availability of water for the domestic use with the subdivision and the housing. Thanks.
Great. Okay, so at this time, if the applicant has any response to any of the public comment given, you can take a few moments to address that.
Great. We're going to have Alan Hill respond. Alan?
Thank you. I want to respond briefly to a couple of things. One, with respect to the pending pond application, Lake County did file a statement of opposition in Angelview's pending water court application for the ponds. They're also, I believe, in the application filed by Mr. Smith. I talked briefly with Sarah Dunn, who's one of the Lake County's water attorneys, and we understand the conversations that need to be had with respect to Bartlett Gulch and the division of the water between two paths. Particularly important for the county is their augmentation plan and the delivery of water down one route rather than the other. So we look forward to working through that and getting that resolved with the county and the parties. There was a comment made about trespass, and I wanted to address that briefly. You know, we're having conversations with at least one of the owners up there about access, and we'll continue to have those conversations. I think all of those will be resolved as we work through the water court process. But I think it's important to note that the domestic water is to be a condition of approval of final plat, and we understand that. The ponds is a aesthetic feature for the property, and yes, there is a substitute water supply plan that has either been approved or is close to approval, and we'll ride the coattails of that, follow on that with the water court application. That's going to be a slower process and be completed before final plat. That will just be, as I say, an aesthetic feature that will be added to the property as we go through the water court process. Were there other things, Melissa, that I can address?
I think that covers what we heard, but Ann and Heather, if there are other questions that you heard in this process that we need to respond to, please let us know. But thank you for your time.
Okay, great. I will just leave it open to county commissioners and planning commission members at this time to make any final questions or comments prior to the closing of the public hearing.
Yeah, I have one more question, Heather. And I really don't want to confuse the role and if the question is really not appropriate, but given some current events with other subdivisions, I guess I just want to make the comment of being sure that there is a robust and clear HOA and fee schedule and something that's sustainable and that will last in perpetuity to maintain your infrastructure. I just want to emphasize that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Bart, do you want to take a stab at that one?
Sure. Our covenants that we've drafted are perpetual, and they provide for the formation of an HOA. Unlike HOAs maybe in some older subdivisions that were created before 1992, ours will be governed by the Colorado Common Interest Ownership Act, which prescribes an annual budgeting process, strongly encourages things like capital reserve funds, requires transparency with the owners, requires owner education, board member education, et cetera, et cetera. It's a very robust Colorado statute that we'll be governed by, that came into effect in 1992 and applies to all communities like this.
Does that help, Commissioner Mudge?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, any other final questions or thoughts before we do a motion for closing public hearing?
I guess I just wanted to chime in again. Thanks for the discussion and appreciate the long answers. Also, Commissioner Mudge, super appreciate that last comment and like to hear that response. I did just want to, you know, again, if this is the wrong way to say this, we can hold it for later, but just wanted to encourage as we go forward towards the plat, you know, final plat, you know, as we figure out the, you know, that 2.1 acres and the use there to, if it is within the sort of code statute, I'd like to have the payment in lieu for other purposes be on the table for discussion. And, you know, I just feel like while I can see the benefit to future BOCCs for having some land in hand down in that part of the county, I just know from what comes into my email inbox and meeting schedule right now that there is, you know, a more urgent need to get our, you know, protect open space, manage the recreation that is just exploding in use here in the county. And I could just see some higher, more urgent uses for the public benefit, you know, throughout the county and in the Twin Lakes region, and sort of adjacent public lands to the Angelview development, you know, for being able to have some funding in hand to, you know, acquire, develop, plan for open space and recreation in the county.
Chairman Lindh, based on that comment, staff would just offer a recommendation or suggestion to the board and to the Planning Commission that potentially a 16th condition for consideration could be prior to the consideration of the proposed public land dedication. Lake County requires more information. Final decision will be made as part of final plat. So I've just kind of crafted something, and as we go into further discussion, but I just wanted to say it now while the board was here.
Thank you. Okay, one last call for any additional comments or questions. Okay, at this time I would entertain a motion to close public hearing.
I make the motion we close this public hearing.
Can I get a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor of closing public hearing? Aye.
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 This time public hearing is closed. County commissioners may exit and have a great evening. And then Planning Commission will go into deliberation. Members of the public and applicant may remain on, but we will not be taking any further public comment from here forward as part of this deliberation and or motion making.
Okay, sorry, Chair, can I just say, I think on the agenda there was going to be a discussion about maybe scheduling a joint work session on sort of like strategic planning needs between the Planning Commission BOCC, and just wanted to see, I mean, don't need to discuss that now, but just wanted to make sure that that didn't drop off when we do find a time to meet together.
Yeah, I would, I guess, suggest that we table that for our next meeting, because I imagine that we're going to be on this for another 30 minutes or more at this point. So and I'm actually canceling another obligation being beyond this time frame. So I would prefer that we table any further agenda items to the next scheduled meeting. Lupe is shaking his head as well.
That sounds realistic for tonight. I'm just wondering if we could just, you know, try to find a time through a doodle poll and not have to wait until the next meeting to start scheduling. Just.
Oh, right. Yeah, I would be fine with staff sending out something to schedule that rather than waiting to the next meeting to figure that out.
Great, thank you.
Do we have anything scheduled for the 26th? So maybe we
the 26th we have Tabor Star, but I had sent out a update that there's a request to table. So the 26th might be a great opportunity. Oh, there's also, oh, excuse me, I'm so sorry. Paul has an application too for a rezone. I'm sorry, there is one application pending on the 26th. So if that application runs a bit long, I will send out a doodle poll and just see what everybody's availability is to help facilitate that.
I wouldn't anticipate that rezone taking a lot of effort or time.
Famous last words.
Okay, great.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, public hearing is closed. Planning Commission members, does anybody have any who would like to start on any discussion and or motion making?
Heather, I could start. I appreciate Anne adding that 16 condition. That was my concern, just because just committing to this right now and not knowing about the funding and how to sustain the emergency service center. And so I do appreciate that 16 condition for Angelview to just talk about what the language or what they want to, if they want to add another coming into the proposal. And yeah, like I appreciate the details in the conversation, the discussion. And for me, I do want to motion and carry on for approval. And I appreciate that they just did the specifics and went into what the conditions were and if they're meeting the conditions for approval. That dashboard is very clever, and I like the details and them just following through the recommendations and the conditions that the commission and staff recommended to them. So I plan for approval.
Hi, I guess my one question was just, you know, there are a lot of gated communities throughout Colorado. And so I'm just curious, you know, how is public benefit dealt there? I think the payment in lieu is probably, you know, it's not a buildable lot to begin with. So that's a little confusing to me. It seemed, I'm glad it's not dedicated open space because it's right at the front with another driveway running through it. But that part, I guess, lends itself more towards emergency services, but I don't know at what point do you work that out, now or in a final plat, I guess.
So Abby, I think you brought up a really interesting discussion. And I would just add that staff will definitely be seeking county legal counsel. And I think this condition 16 will give everyone time to take a breath and to vet this a little in a deeper degree of understanding, as well as consulting with our own legal experts as to what the options are and what makes the most sense. But I think you bring up a really great point.
Heather, I thought it was a good presentation. I thought everything was pretty clear. I like the idea that it's, you know, they've, from the sketch plan, they've changed the roads like we asked. That's been done. That's a big thing. The idea of 17 lots instead of, you know, in the very beginning we heard, and you know, a lot of that was rumor, of course, but 78 lots and helicopters and all that stuff. And I'm glad that's not taking place. There's a concern about that's parcel E, and I know that they're, you know, the worry is fires, and fires are going to happen. That's a big thing. And the guy talked about he needed help, an ambulance or something to get to Leadville. But the South Fire Station is a lot closer than they've ever had before. And I think that parcel E is going to need a lot of talking about. And other than that, and it sounds like the water situation with the Bartlett is going to be taken care of. So other than that, I don't have too many other questions. Thanks.
Yeah, I think the latest condition that Anne came up with solves my concern, just because I think there needs to just be, I mean, I love the intent of it all, but I just want to make sure there's some good vetting done as to how that looks and everybody has the same expectations of that further down the road. So if there's no other questions or comments here, does somebody want to make a motion? And just a reminder that Anne has it kind of written out on that staff report.
Right, and I'm happy to read the motion for anyone if they would like, but certainly you can do it yourself if you would like.
Yeah, I have the motion already, so I can motion it.
Yep, go ahead.
And the only thing is the 16 condition is not there. If I could.
Absolutely. Would you like, when you get to 15, I'll just add 16 for you.
Perfect. Thank you, Anne. All right. This is motion for approval. I move the Planning Commission recommend approval to the Lake County Board of County Commissioners of file number 20-19 Angelview subdivision preliminary plan with the following conditions. 1, construction plan documents for building permit are required to include a stamped foundation plan designed and reviewed by a Colorado licensed engineer. This shall be included in a plat note. 2, the applicant will provide Knox boxes at all gated entry points to ensure emergency egress. The boxes shall be considered a public involvement with the SIA. 3, the revised drainage study and erosion control plan, WPHP, and amended construction document pages to include parking shall be reviewed by the county engineer. Any suggested revisions shall be considered and adequately addressed prior to the final plat. 4, applicant will provide will serve letter confirmation from the chosen telecommunication provider prior to the final plat. 5, payment of the school land dedication fee in lieu in the amount of $17,153 as determined by the LCSD and approved by the developer shall be due and payable prior to the recording of the final plat. 6, construction testing and observation during the grading and site development Building and pavement construction is required. Applicants shall provide monthly reporting to Lake County Building and Land Use to demonstrate compliance. 7, subgrade investigation and pavement design is required. 8, foundation installation observation is required. 9, an approved water supply plan is required at final plat, along with compliance of the preliminary submittal requirements of section 3.16.4 CT utility plan, BB water service and supply plan. 10, section 3.16.4 C4R soils and vegetation report. Applicants shall comply with all soil and vegetation items discussed at the CTL Thompson and Birch ecology reports. 11, a lighting plan compliant with dark sky principle shall be submitted prior to final plat. 12, the parking spaces crossing into track B from Angelview Way shall be repaired. 13, Appendix Q shall be recorded and a reference to it shall be made on the plat in the note. 14, the draft SIA shall be reviewed by legal with suggested edits provided to the applicant and considered prior to the final plat. 15, all statements made by the applicant in this application and in hearing shall be considered as conditions of approval unless modified by other conditions of approval.
Number 16, prior to the consideration of the proposed public land dedication, Lake County requires more information. Final decision will be made as part of final plat.
And further finding pursuant to LDC section 3.16.3H. 1, the preliminary plan is consistent with the Lake County Comprehensive Plan. The proposed preliminary is substantial conformance with the express purposes, intents, goals, and policy of the Lake County Comprehensive Plan. 2, the preliminary plan as condition is consistent with the Lake County Land Development Code. The proposed preliminary plan materially complies with all the standards of this chapter and all the provisions of this Land Development Code, including but not limited to the applicable standards of Chapter 4, District Regulations, Chapter 5, Use Regulations, Chapter 6, Development Standards, Chapter 10, Roadway Design Standards, and Chapter 11, Floodplain Damage Prevention. 3, the preliminary plan spatial pattern is sufficient. The proposed preliminary plan demonstrates sufficient development patterns, utility designs, and installation and public and private infrastructure through design and layout. The preliminary plan avoids requiring duplication or premature extension of public infrastructure or resulting in a leapfrog pattern of development. 4, the preliminary plan as condition has suitability for development. The property proposed to be subdivided is suitable for development, considering topography, environmental resources, and natural and man-made hazards that may affect the potential development of the property and existing and probable future public improvements to the area. 5, the preliminary plan as condition has compatibility with surrounding uses. The proposed preliminary plan is generally compatible with the existing and currently permissible future of adjacent land and other substantially impacted land, services, or infrastructure improvements to the area. 6, adequate facilities. The applicant has demonstrated that the development proposed in the preliminary plan as condition will be provided with adequate facilities for potable water supply, sewage disposal, solid waste disposal, electrical supply, fire protection, and roads will be reasonably located in relation to schools, police, and fire protection, and emergency medical services, all while maintaining adequate levels of service to existing development.
Great, thank you, Lupe. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion on the motion? All right, hearing none, I will do a roll call vote. Lupe Bobadilla.
Aye.
Abby Dallmann.
Aye.
Howard Tritz.
Aye.
And Heather Lindh, aye. Okay, the motion carries. Now I entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move we adjourn for the evening.
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here this evening.
Thank you all so much.
For all your
Yeah. Thank you for all your time and attention.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good, we'd buy y'all pizza, but you know, that would be appropriate.
Good night.
All right. Good night. Thank you.
Good night.